You know these rules, guys. Thank you. We'll get there. Apologies for the slight clunkiness. Let's just need to get rid of that from my end. Okay, we're going to have this recorded as part of a kind of information bank of resources we'll talk about later on as we go on. If you don't want it to be seen, please keep your camera off. And I'd be really grateful if you could put in the chat column who you are, and if you're affiliated with any group, that would be really helpful in terms of helping us record attendees. Next slide, please, Catherine. One of the things that would be really keen on individuals here, and I'll repeat this every now and again for latecomers, if you're an organisation already delivering a fuel poverty project of sorts, would you mind just jotting down a few lines about that organisation and what that project is, not only for us to kind of document this, but also to kind of share that knowledge, so building links between attendees. That would be really helpful. So again, if you are delivering some kind of fuel poverty project, if you'd like to highlight what you're doing, a link to it if it's appropriate, a few lines just describing what it's doing, that would be super helpful. Okay, I think, what's the next slide if there is one? Yeah, that's fine. You can take that down for the moment and switch to Alex's. So we have 4 speakers today. Thank you to our speakers. The first is Sales Fuel Poverty Coordinator, Alex Hartley. Alex, give us a wave. And then I think, Alex, tell me if I'm right, it's Catherine Garcia from Celsea, then Felix White from Repowering London, and then Suzel Chappell from Habitats and Heritage. Give me a thumbs up if that's right, Alex. Great. Without further ado, then, if you have questions, we have a question and answer session after our range of speakers. We're going to make sure we allocate enough time to do that. If there is a whole surfeit of questions, we might go over the slight 1 hour. So we'll see how we go in the generosity of our speakers to stay on and answer questions. And if you have questions, clarifications you wish to set out, put them in the chat column. Myself and colleagues will be monitoring as we go along. Okay, Alex, over to you.
Thank you for that whistle-stop tour of who Cell are and what we're up to. And thank you for Catherine for bringing up my slides. So as she is about to put them into presenter mode. Thank you very much. So yeah, just a recap it's really useful for us to know who we're talking to and where you're at with any energy advocacy or advice projects that you've currently got. You might be at a pre stage and not a member of Community Energy London, and you're not even a member of a community energy group. There's loads to get involved with if you aren't, or we can support you setting up one too. Another point, if you might have tried a light kind of advice intervention before. However, we might have people that are wanting to amplify that or scale it up, or wanting to add something new into the mix because you think that it might be right for your community. You're welcome here too. And we also might have people that are already doing larger projects and looking for adding in extra dimensions to it, or even looking at bringing in a few innovations around how we help people. Just one, next slide please. We can't go ahead before making sure we're all coming from the same place. There's lots of phrases bandied around: fuel poverty, fuel stress, energy poverty, affordable heat, affordable energy, affordable warmth. But essentially, it is anyone who is struggling to pay energy bills. This can be subjective and it also can be objective. People's lived experience is just as vital as all the data on the data stores that I'm going to give you an introduction to. And with the news today, this morning, very topically, we didn't know we were going to be clashing on this day where we've had some absolutely horrendous news confirmed that essentially with the new price cap, according to NEA, that's going to see a huge, devastating leap from 6.5 million, which is scandalous as it is, to 8.9 million with the new price cap, with a further one projected for the following one as well. We can't rely on government, sadly, at the moment for what they've got proposed, but lots of organisations are putting their voices towards saying that the government need to improve the household support packages. However, there is still things we can do as community energy advice agencies or projects or initiatives to actually help people. It is not going to balance. Anything we can do is not going to suddenly magically increase or save the households that we want to help the equivalent of £2,000 a year. However, it's not all doom and gloom. This is an opportunity for energy efficiency. It's an opportunity for teaching people about managing their own energy usage, and it's also an opportunity to help empower people around their energy bills. And whether it's a light signposting service that you create, or you come up with a full suite projects with multiple different types of projects targeting different audiences with different needs across a variety of ways to reach them, all are important, from small acorns, etc. The triangle of evil, the three things that cause this situation is low incomes, high energy costs, and inefficient homes. In the UK, our housing stock is pretty poor. We're not really geared up for extreme heat or extreme cold, which I'm sure you're all aware if you live in a house that isn't an A star. Although I was very impressed to hear yesterday, Nadia's new home at Chelsea is going to be a B. So that's the highest I've come across in London so far. Next slide. So how to decide you're where you're at as a group or an organisation, or you might be a poverty focused organisation, and because of a lot of your clients or service users are starting to talk about the most topical thing at the moment, energy prices, how can you design something? Oh, well done, Pamela. How can we design something that is actually going to be of use, and what are our options? How on earth do you go about it? It's like, if you've never done anything like this before, it's quite daunting. Where do you start? Well, we've got a couple of ideas for you to try on for size and take back to your organizations or groups. Next slide, please. So there's some background noise, if someone could mute, thank you. So first of all, gaps in provision in your local area. This is really quite important to do. Find out what is already on the ground happening around you, and whether that might be through doing home visits, or it might be targeting working with older people. It always sounds really bad when you're like targeting the fuel poor, like you're some evil corporate overlord. But how it's not worth doubling up. However, on that said, there is more than enough need with me not even trying to pretend to be Mystic Meg and project what's going to be going on in, you know, where we're going to be in even in a year's time. However, there are even if someone's already active in the area, talk to them, because we're all trying to do the same thing at the end of the day. Sometimes there might be a bit of sibling rivalry, but at the end of the day, we all have in common, we want to do something that's going to help people as well as the planet. So we have that common denominator. And it's also not worth putting all your sort of efforts towards trying to work with, you know, older Asian adults in Northeast London when there's already another organisation doing that. However, it is good to talk, but it's also do a desk-based, Google-based search, but also talking to whether community energy groups, Community Energy London, and just having a chat with your ward councillors or your housing providers. There's lots of ways to find it, because it's not energy efficient to double up, but we can work in harmony with each other, because even if everybody in this session went away and suddenly started a new initiative, we still wouldn't be touching the sides for the scale of need that is coming. Actually, it's already here, but today's just, you know, I can't even process how awful it is. So let's quickly change slides and distract me. There's other ways as well. You can think about, it might be that where you're based, where the hotspots are of fuel poverty. How on earth do you find that out? Well, there's actually, this is where utilizing data available can come in handy. Parallel is a really useful link there. We've got this, you'll all have copies of the slides and they'll be on the website as well. So you can have a look what is actually where going on in a ward area, or I can't remember if it's done by ward or postcode, parallel, one or the other. Or you can look at the sub-regional fuel poverty statistics that are available on the government's website. And alongside that, you can look at the London Data Store information in terms of looking at the lower super output areas. Sorry, I've used, there's an acronym there that doesn't say what it means. So by this, you can start to build up, if you want to be targeting people in fuel poverty, it's not probably worth going to very affluent areas. However, we do get people that are asset rich and cash poor. Some of the most harrowing cases I can think of are people that might have been in a 4-bedroom house rattling around in there on their own, not having any heating on, their boiler's broken, staying in bed all day and spending £10 a week on food. So we can't prejudge it, but having some data would make any funding bid stronger, and also making sure what you're designing is coming in line with where the actual need is. But again, you can also bear in mind that lived experience as well as the more objective ways of measuring it.
2 minutes, Alex.
Thank you. Next slide. So you could just start off by signposting people to, for example, there'll be the new GLA Warmer Homes centralized phone number that you'll be able to ring up from anywhere in London to get energy advice or connected to a local service. However, signposting to local agencies is a good point of view, but at the other end of the scale, these are all the different areas you could be looking at, including when you are looking at how you could help people to get out or reduce the impact of the energy costs on them, as well as alleviating things around their vulnerabilities or their current status that's got them into fuel poverty. That is a huge list, and I think this was based on something that we've looked at CELSI to work out what we actually do during energy advice sessions. Now that's quite an intimidating list, but even if you're just looking at 1 or 2 of these in anything that you start off with, that is going to mean that something's going to be in existence that doesn't already exist, and then you can build on that, learn from that, and maybe based on your community needs that you customize it based on your particular clients. You might discover there's such a variety of languages in a certain area that starting off with a community energy champions project and then increasing how many people you've got who are multilingual is going to be a good one for you. Next slide.
You'll have to make this one more or less the last one, please, Alex, because we're running out of time for other colleagues.
Yeah, there's one after this. So these are the types of project. Workshops, quite straightforward information. Energy cafes, where you pop in a community location with a high footfall to stop people and get them to talk to you about their energy bills. Home visits, community energy champions, where you train up people to become advisors at a community level, not actually energy advisors. You can work with other organizations like food poverty or gardening or any of those sorts of things. Also training up frontline workers that come into contact with these people. Next slide. Homework suggestion for you. Next time you have a board or team meeting, have a look at those list of projects, think about what you need to do, physical stuff, skills, and the type of advice you can give, and then just rate them for impact and difficulty, and then blending that with any feedback from outreach or a public meeting and your research, you'll start to build up a picture of what could be right for you and your community group. If it's your first attempt out, you could, working with a community partner that's already active in where you're looking at, is a really quick way to sort of piggyback on existing networks, and they'll be very grateful for you bringing in this into their local area. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks for that, Alex. If there's any further points, just drop them straight into the chat column, I think. Our next column, thank you very much, is Catherine Garcia. Catherine, apologies, Catherine, we didn't speak to you early enough such that if you wanted to share your slides. Have you got slides you're sharing from your screen, or?
Yes, hi. I have some slides.
Okay, Catherine,
I'm not sure how
enabled.
I can share my screen.
You can share them.
You should be co-host now, Catherine. Go ahead.
Okay, let me see how it goes. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yeah, just go into a presentation mode, Catherine, you should be fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So is that okay? Do you see the presentation, or do you see?
We see the notes bit as well. If you can get rid of the notes, that'd be easier for everybody, but it's up to it's only if you can get rid of the notes bit.
Yes. Give me just 1 second. I just need to share a different screen. Is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Okay. All right, good. So, hi everyone. I'm Catherine Garcia. I'm the Energy Advice Operations Manager for Southeast London Community Energy, or just CELSI by short. I just want to tell you a little bit more about our services. So our mission is to create a low carbon future in which everyone can access affordable energy to meet their ends, and also has a voice on how this one is produced. So we do this through different ways. So one of them is that we have lots of different projects across renewable energy. But one of the main areas of our work is across energy justice, so where we want to reduce the fuel poverty. We do this by supporting lots of vulnerable households to stay warm and well. So I want to tell you how CELSI started. So I have been with CELSI for around 3 years now. So I can tell you about the very beginning. So I just did a little bit more of research across all the documents that we had, and just a little questions around. So CELSI started in 2014. And we were funded by a group of volunteers that were residents in Greenwich and Lewisham, and they all shared the same vision. And one of them was that they were committed to warm homes at low up in their energy bills. So this is how they started doing this. So they started by creating some energy cafes and delivering numerous workshops across Greenwich and Lewisham. So an energy cafe, for some of you that don't know what this one is a place where we go to different libraries or community centers, and we just set a table and we want to talk to the residents about their energy bills, but we want to do this on a more friendly environment. So we bring them tea and coffee and we just talk about it. And at the time, it was only 2 energy advisors that were funded by Beson and Base. Even though there was only 2 energy advisors, they managed to reach 90 frontline workers and 220 members of the public. And through the energy cafes, they supported 149 people, which I think it was a great start. And then after this, they continued delivering their energy cafes in Greenwich and Lewisham. And then later on in 2017, they started one other project, which was called Power and Power. So this is a project that was delivered alongside different children's centers in Greenwich, where they were providing energy advice in the children's centers, and also started doing our first home visits. So these home visits, they were delivered by one member of the staff who was working part-time back then, and one of our volunteers. And they started doing their home visits by bike and just carrying a trolley around. It was a very small geographic area, so it was quite easy to do it in this way. And also we were doing some home visits in Lusham to own occupiers. And the idea with this is that we're reaching those that were eligible for ECHO to fund some large measures. So these large measures include some insulation in the loft or cavity walls. So in 2019, we became one of the partners of SLEEP. Nowadays it's called South London Healthy Homes. So this is a strategic partnership across South London. So with different organizations in South London, we have a central phone number, which is 24/7, and just residents can reach us at any time. We also just started delivering our home visits across the 5 Southeast London boroughs. So because we showed with our work on previous year that we were capable of doing a great work on these home visits, we started getting more funding to do this across more boroughs. And we also continue doing our energy cafes in all the boroughs, except just for one of them, just because we couldn't find a place where to deliver at that time. We also started doing some different projects. So 2 of them were the Faith and Power and Empowering Elders. So the main idea with these 2 projects is that we wanted to reach a different audience and just create like a path for them to reach us and just talk about their energy bills, something that is not like easy to talk about it with a stranger, but through these projects, it was a good success. Then obviously everyone knows what happened in early 2020. So we have to move really quickly from our in-person advice to a telephone advice service. So at the beginning of the lockdown, it was only 2 advisors, including me, delivering all of this advice. And we had lots of support from our volunteers. I think at the time we had around 6 or 8 volunteers providing energy advice. And as the time passed, we created a big group of energy advisors. So we ended up with 6 full-time energy advisors. And we were all working on a same office, obviously with some measures so we could work around COVID. And we continued doing our workshops, but this time we were using Zoom and Teams. And also we had to move from doing our home visits to do something more remotely. So we started doing our deliveries of like measures. So it's like the box that you can see here on the picture, which includes different energy saving items like some LEDs and lots of different little things that also help them save some energy and water. And then this is where we are nowadays. And so we are slowly going back to more delivery in person, doing our workshops, visiting different children's centers, different community groups. We also see some people inside our offices. Over the past year, we have supported more than 1,000 people, where, as Alex mentioned before, some of the areas that we covered, not everyone speaks in English. So we also provide our service in different languages. So at the moment, we are covering 4 languages. And over the past year, 135 of our clients, they didn't speak any English. Also, 595 of them had a disability or a long-term illness. And also a big part of them, they were in a very low income. And all of this area, they were receiving benefits or waiting for their benefits to start. And also over the last year, we saved a total of £377,000 to our clients. So this one is included all the money that they save by switching to different payment methods, receiving their energy advice on how to reduce their energy consumption. Also the money that they save installing their energy saving measures, the ones that we showed you before. And yeah, just lots of different aspects around that.
Catherine, I'm afraid you've only got 1 minute, please.
It's okay, I'm finished.
Oh, Perfect timing. Well done. Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
that's really good, a really helpful history of kind of the projects that cells have undertaken from the kind of the early days to where you are now. Thank you so much for that. Felix, without any further ado, Felix, have you got slides?
No, I'll just talk it through.
Perfect, thank you, mate. Catherine, do you mind taking down your slides, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
And sorry, would you like me to keep to 10 minutes or less than that? Sorry?
Sorry, Felix, I was muted there. But 8 to 10 minutes would be great. I'll give you a prompt at 8.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, hi everyone. I work for Repowering London. We're a community energy organisation based in Lambeth, and we work in other boroughs as well. And we were set up originally by the founders of a local community energy solar project. And yeah, their vision was to help other communities also take forwards community-owned solar and other low carbon projects as well. And we've been doing that since 2012. And I'm going to talk a bit about our experience of providing energy advice work and support, which originally was focused around where we'd helped set up community solar projects. And the trigger really was each project created a community fund, and the members of each co-op were thinking about how those community funds can be used, and there was a general kind of focus on trying to do fuel poverty reduction. That's also linked to the fact that when you install solar panels on a block of flats at the moment in the UK, you can't supply the electricity directly to residents. That's something that Repowering London's been working on, but it meant that people weren't getting the same direct benefits that they might otherwise if they lived in a normal house or street level property. So that's why we kind of wanted to focus on energy advice and small measures of the sort that Catherine's been talking about to help reduce people's bills. But our work was really focused in the kind of catchment area of where these solar projects were. But gradually work spread, and we were getting more inquiries from people, across Lambeth, in Hackney as well, for advice and support. And as Alex said earlier, there's a kind of a wide range of services that people can access in principle, but often people haven't heard of them, or they might be a language issue, as Catherine mentioned, or they may just need some in-person support to help go through the process or gather the information required. So that's really who we would try to focus on helping. So referring people to existing services if that would work for them, and then focusing on people who weren't able to use those services for whatever reason. And we expanded our support with a bit of funding from UK Power Networks to a wider range of people in Lambeth. And then the pandemic came along, and we decided to expand our team and to also, look at beyond, I guess, basic energy advice, which is what we started with in terms of helping people change tariff, small measures in the home, maybe some grants to help with energy debt, to thinking about how we could work more closely with other local support providers across a wider range of needs, because all these things are really connected. As Alex was saying, one of the biggest causes of fuel poverty is a lack of income. So working with organisations like Income Max at national level, but then also local organisations in Lambeth like Centre 70 for debt and benefits advice, working with organisations like Christians Against Poverty to help with debt relief as well. And our role kind of became more focused on the quite kind of complex cases where people had long-standing energy problems that they hadn't been able to resolve on their own. So things that might arise where people's gas supply might have been capped, and getting that uncapped can be quite a complicated process. people being on prepayment meters where that's not an appropriate payment type for them. You know, particularly, for example, somebody who's diabetic and has insulin in their fridge, if they can't afford to top up their meter, they might lose their insulin supply, and that obviously has big consequences for them. So that's the area we were working in 2021. And the challenges that we came up against were really around the lack of wider institutional support when safeguarding issues might arise, for example. We had a small team of just 2 people, and if somebody's health was immediately at risk and the safeguarding referral process hadn't worked, that was something that was very difficult for us to manage just on our own. And we also were reflecting, or were finding, that the vast majority of our time was being spent on helping a small number of people who weren't getting support from anywhere else, or coordinated support, let's say. And that meant we weren't, you know, able to help a wider range of people. And so we reflected on this, and at the end of 2021, we decided to pause our public-facing one-to-one kind of open to everyone advice service. And we've since then been focusing on providing support to other service providers who hold the relationship with the, you know, the household or end client, you call it, as well as running a volunteer training program, which is really focused on getting some of the key information, knowledge, and skills about, I guess, early stage energy management into the communities that we work in, and helping that knowledge to be passed on in a kind of more viral way, rather than just through us as advice providers, and also to kind of accumulate the shared expertise of people's lived experience and the own solutions they found for helping to manage their energy needs. And so that's really the approach that we're focused on at the moment. Yeah, thanks, Said. And it's approach we see sitting very much alongside the other support services that are available from organisations like Celsi and others across London. I would also, part of our response has also been around, I guess, policy engagement, and, you know, as we're seeing with today's announcement, we need some really big change to our energy system to create long-term solutions and an energy system which actually meets people's needs. So we wanted to be able to put some of our time and resource into raising the visibility of people for whom the energy system isn't working, and also demonstrate positive alternatives through community-owned generation, through community-led retrofits, through mutual aid services, and so on. So I'll just sort of say that all these things connect, and it's great to be a part of an ecosystem of hopefully more people who want to work on this together. And as you can see, today's a hard day, and I'm feeling quite emotional about it. So thank you for the opportunity to share our experience so far, and look forward to working with you.
Felix, thank you. Again, another really kind of excellent series of examples of how groups are trying to work with their local communities in what are challenging times, and that evolution in terms of the projects, the skills, and everything else that we're doing. Felix, please stay on. We'll have the Q&A, which will follow. Susan, so without further ado,
thank you.
Chapel of Habitats and Heritage, over to you. Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Well, I'm Susan from Habitats and Heritage, but I'm actually speaking here as SW LEAP. So that stands for South West London Energy Advice Partnership. And that's exactly what we are. We're a partnership initially of Habitats and Heritage and Crew. Habitats and Heritage are based in the London Borough of Richmond in East Twickenham, and Crew are based in Wandsworth. And together we've developed a project which offers a flexible energy service to vulnerable customers living and accessing services. And they're actually accessing services is quite important on the sort of outer edges of all of those boroughs. And it's the boroughs that we cover are Merton, Richmond and Wandsworth. And when it was initially set up, it was both saving money and reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Obviously, from an environmental point of view, we still care about the carbon dioxide emissions, but the news that we've been having over the last 18 months, people really now are focusing on money. And so that's what we do. We are a partnership, so we work with as many other organisations as we can. So we work with Richmond and Wandsworth councils. We've spoken to councillors. We had an event in Southside in Wandsworth where we had local councillors came along, and we explained to them how the service worked. We have since then been working very closely with both Richmond and Wandsworth, so we get invited along to various things that they're holding. So for example, last night I did a presentation at Richmond Social Housing Forum, where they had about 50 people along, all in social housing in Richmond, and it was on cost of living. So there was a variety of people, some of whom we work with, like Citizens Advice Bureau, Hampton Fund, Richmond Parish Lands and so on, people that offer other help. So it's very much trying to give that complete package. So we provide training on energy efficiency. So we do training for people like councillors and so on if they want it. When we set up, it was about energy switching. It's very rare now that we can switch anybody, but it is there in the background. Very occasionally it might be right for somebody. And any topics around that. So we have both our own staff. We also have an amazing team of volunteers, and this can be work experience. So our volunteers tend to be people either at the start of their career or at the end of their career, and they are all absolutely amazing, and they go out with our trained professionals to help people in the community and help people in the community. So Crew, which I'm not involved in, was a community benefit society, and it was founded in 2014. They work with charities to install energy efficiency measures such as LEDs, building management systems, heat transfer solutions, solar PV, etc., heat pumps, other things. They also had a history of running energy cafes to support people in fuel poverty. They also run eco games events to engage with and educate both children and adults. And they've got a history of training energy advice champions. They also have a number of languages, which is something that's already been referred to. Habitats and Heritage, who I work for, are a charity. We were formed in 2020 from a merger between two charities, South West London Environment Network, who I worked for before, and the Environment Trust. And we've got over 8 years now, more like 10 years of delivering home energy visits across the London boroughs of Richmond and Kingston. So that was the skill set that we brought, if you like. And we have also worked extensively with local community organisations, housing associations and schools. And that's very much my focus. So who do we help? Well, we're funded by the Energy Savings Trust's Energy Industry Voluntary Redress Scheme, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's there to help vulnerable consumers who are likely to have been disproportionately affected by rising energy costs. So that can be anybody over 65, families with children under 5, people on low incomes, not necessarily just people who are on benefits, people who are, for whatever reason, digitally excluded, so they don't have access to the internet, they don't know what's out there. Care leavers, people who've got long-term health conditions and disabilities, and we say disabilities seen and unseen. We're all aware of mental health issues, and many of the people that we help have got mental health issues, and these are obviously being made more difficult by what we're seeing. Domestic abuse survivors, refugees and migrants, and anybody really who is struggling. And I think it was said earlier about a number of the people that we deal with are what are known as, they've got large houses that they may have bought 30, 40 years ago, but they really can't afford now to live in those houses. So we can help them to reduce their bills on a monthly and daily basis even. So these are the things that we cover. We look at people who are confused about what to do. There is so much out there. There's so many people saying there's nothing you can do. Well, actually, as Alex said, we can't change the world, but we can make a little bit of a difference, and we can make people feel that somebody cares and somebody's listening to them. We can hopefully in the future look at the type of tariff. At the moment, again, it's a little bit difficult. We look at whether they can switch. Very occasionally it might be worth doing it. One of the big things now that we're doing at the moment is what grants are available, and these are both grants that are local grants, so our team of advisors know exactly what's available in the 3 boroughs that we cover, and they do vary from borough to borough. We also look at national grants to make sure that people are getting the Warms Homes discount, that they are signed up with the Priority Services Register, that they have got their £150 that was delivered through the local councils if they meet those criteria, that they are aware of what they can claim if they're on various benefits. And again, we will work with other organisations. We'll help them if they're in energy debt. So we'll take the time to make those phone calls to advocate for them. And then probably the most importantly is what can they do differently? What behavioural changes can they make? These can make a real difference. And I did a presentation last night and we looked at all of the changes that can be made, and working on the sort of prices that we had yesterday. Some of the very simple ones, just turning everything off standby, draft proofing gaps, turning off lights, washing at 30 degrees and trying to make sure that you do full laundry loads. Try and not use a tumble dryer if you can. Take a 4-minute shower. Swap a bath for a shower every week. Don't overfill your kettle. Insulate your hot water cylinder. Change your shower head. Fit a tap aerator. Putting in radiator panels, LED lights. Turning down your thermostat by 1 degree. All of those are things that people can do at no cost. What we do when we come out for one of our home energy visits, or we give a telephone advice system, is that we offer a lot of these things that people perhaps know they should be doing but can't afford to do. So we will come into their homes, we'll do a complete check, we'll look at all the things I've just spoken about, but we will provide completely free LED lights, radiator foil, draft excluder. We will work with them to look at other organisations that perhaps can provide them with white goods or can help them with furniture. So where I live, we have a Richmond furniture scheme where we can refer them to there and they will help them. We can also refer to Thinking Works to make sure that they get any vouchers, so discounts for up to £49 on their gas and electricity. If we need to, we can refer them to the Citizens Advice Bureau. We will advocate, as I say, with all the other organisations to try and get them as much help as we can. We also offer telephone calls. Those are for emergency situations. So if someone's really struggling, then we'll offer that. Or if somebody feels uncomfortable about having somebody in their home for whatever reason, or still some people, let's not forget, are still having to self-isolate or shield as a result of COVID because they are still have immunosuppressed or something like that, or they just don't want somebody in their home. We also have energy cafes, and that's something that was new to me. That's where I was this morning. I was at an energy cafe at Witton Community Centre in their food bank. And it was great to be able to speak to people just this morning to explain. I made sure before I went along that I knew what all the new prices were, what the price cap means, because as I say, I think people have already mentioned, the price cap isn't the most that you can pay, it's an average household. So, you know, just explaining to people what they're going to be paying per kilowatt hour, you know, people didn't understand that the 3,549 isn't the most they can pay, but it's the amount that they would pay based on the price cap as it will be on the 1st of October if there's no intervention. And, you know, when you're looking at 50 pence per unit of electricity and 15 pence per unit of gas, and then you add in the standing charge, it can be huge. And I actually calculated mine this morning. And if looking at last October to November, so probably one of the coldest months, we were paying in total £182 a month. If that making the same usage would be £584 this October, November, and that's huge. And for many people, it's completely unaffordable. So we like to think that we're just there just to show people that somebody really does care, somebody's interested in them, somebody's going to do everything that they can to help them and make sure that everything that's out there we are making sure that they are accessing. And if they need the help to fill in the form, to contact the provider, to contact the grant funder, then we will help them and do that with them. And it's just really to show them that we're all in this together and we really do understand what they're going through. And we want to be there, an advocate for them, and just show that there's somebody out there that cares. And that's us.
Susan, that was a fantastic roundup of things, and just goes to shows you how much work is going on at the moment, but also just how many connections need to be made to make it effective. In the last 10 minutes or so, can we have Catherine and Felix, if you're still there and available to take questions, if you could take your, if you could put your cameras on. I'll check to see if there's any questions, but a couple of things, if I could start from Susan and maybe bounce it across our three additional speakers, is that you mentioned, Susan, the liaison with councillors and also the different approaches the three different councils you are working with are taking. How much of a challenge, well, one, on the councillors, are they finding that their surgeries this is becoming an increasing issue for them and they're actively wanting to find out more? So this is for all speakers. And two, is that kind of diversity of kind of projects or support mechanisms of different councils, is that a positive thing or a negative thing, trying to navigate your way through all of that? So a quick word on councillors and council. So a minute or so from you each. So Susan, if you want to kick off.
Yeah, of course. Well,
we'll work our way through.
We've done, we have quite a lot of contact with councillors in both Richmond and Wandsworth, and they have been very approachable. As I say, we had we called it a conference. It's a bit of a grand name for it, but in July, and we invited councillors from both and council officers as well, from both Richmond, Wandsworth and Merton. And we had a good number from Richmond and Wandsworth, not quite, well, I'm not sure if we had any actually from Merton, but and they have been really positive. And for example, yesterday when I was at the Social Housing Forum, that obviously was run by council officers and councillors who are very engaged with us in Richmond, and they are in Wandsworth as well. And the councillors themselves are starting to understand the role that they can play in making sure that people are aware of things. And they've been very good in publicising our events. And I've been really impressed with both Richmond and Wandsworth, I have to say. We haven't had as much contact in Merton yet, but hopefully we will, and that will change. Although we've been doing quite a lot of work with schools in Merton, which is fantastic. And then in terms of sort of how that helps us, when people come to you through the council, I think they realise that it is trustworthy, because there's still, unfortunately, a lot of scammers out there. And if you are already in a vulnerable place, sometimes when something is supposed to be free, people don't quite trust it. So it's great when they see that the council are aware of you and that they feel that you are reputable. I think that makes a big difference in the sort of trust thing. So we've been really pleased. But the grants are a minefield, I would say, because every council is different. So that is a minefield.
Yeah, that brings in the challenges, I think, especially when we're working across multiple boroughs. I'll go Felix and Catherine, then Alex. So Felix, if a minute from you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I think probably, as everyone knows, it really varies between local authorities. It really varies within local authorities. It really varies as personnel change. That's probably one of the hard things when you're locally based organisation. Certainly at Repowering, we've had much less turnover than within our local authority. So, and sometimes work doesn't continue. But what I think we're seeing, growing awareness across the different, departments within local authorities of how we're dealing with a kind of an interconnected crisis, and there needs to be coordinated work within the authority and then with local partners. That really came through, I think, in the response to the pandemic, and we were able to kind of coordinate our energy device work alongside the council's kind of support for food aid and other support services. And I think we're going to try and take a similar approach this winter, where some local authorities are looking at opening heat hubs. We're not calling them fuel banks because of the kind of stigma associated with that with some people. But basically warm spaces that can potentially provide a range of other support services. We had a meeting about this, among other ideas for responding this winter, with Community Energy London last night, but joined up working and I guess looking beyond the boundaries of any of our own organisations, I see is the most important thing.
Cheers, Felix. Catherine?
So I think that we have been working with councillors for a while because we started doing our project around fuel poverty since 2014. So they kind of know about CELSI and where we are. And we, as I suppose they're saying on the chat, we have been regular with our energy cafes. The one in Woolwich, we have it since the beginning and we have been there every year. So the councillors, if they come across a resident that needs our support, they just send them directly to us at the energy cafes, or more recently on our telephone advice service. We find that some of them are more engaged than others, depending on the area where they are. But we find some support from them as well.
I think that's really helpful. There's one or two questions in the chat column, but if people want to ask them directly, please just raise your hand using the Zoom tool and I'll come to you. Alex, just on that question of that diversity across councils, and as Catherine mentioned as well, the interest in councillors, what's your experience today?
It's really interesting that you can have two councils next to each other. They're both the same political party, totally different, and it can be really hard. And that's one of the powers of community energy advice projects, is that being, you know, hyper local, we know what estates have got, you know, really poor housing stock, and we can know exactly what that is available in that borough. Like, for example, knowing things like the Hampton Fund, I don't know if Susan mentioned it, that has done emergency prepayment vouchers and stuff like that. So that the power of local community and based energy advice is really important. Ward councillors, they are hearing more and more in their surgeries, people struggling with rent arrears, energy bills, you know, absolutely terrified. We can actually support in upskilling them to know how to respond to their residents that are suffering, but they can also be influential politically for us, like getting local authorities to adopt the fuel poverty motion, which some of the London boroughs have. I know Lewisham and Greenwich have, but, you know, banging on the door of our relevant personal ward councillors, because they have to act for you because you live in their patch, and your MP, but also then to flag it up with your portfolio holders in the local cabinets to adopt as councils. The End Fuel Poverty Coalition have got a model motion that can be pretty much picked up by anybody. And I've forgotten the other point I was going to make, so I'll shut up.
Okay. Well, there was a question that Dave Powers asked in the chat, but I think it was very effectively answered by a number of people. So I can't see any raised hands. It was good that Susan mentioned the redress funding. The second of these 6 workshops, this is the third workshop, was focused on funding. We had an EST representative come to talk about the redress funding, and you'll find our previous events archived on the Community Energy London website, and my colleague Catherine will provide a link to the fuel poverty kind of mini website we've set up there. So, you know, that's a key element of trying to secure that funding. We're coming across our deadline time, so I'll ask one quick question. If there's, so I mean, this event was very much about trying to provide examples of groups who are already doing fuel poverty and support kind of services in their local area. I suppose a kind of an easy catch-all question perhaps for me to just end today's session is your advice to groups and the one thing they should probably do over the next 6 to 8 weeks to get their kind of projects or their kind of ideas together. What would you suggest? So Susan, if I can come to you first, and we'll go Susan, Felix, Catherine, and Alex, you can end off with your final comments. And we'll close the meeting. So Susan, if you're still there.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think it's kind of, it's know your market, know who it is that you want to help, and also think about capacity, because that's one of the biggest issues. As we all are going to get busier, do we have the capacity? So very much, so for example, when I was at the Energy Cafe this morning, being really clear about the fact that there will be a little bit of a wait for a visit. Don't overpromise, because these people are already vulnerable. Be really honest with them about what you can and can't do, and you're just there to support them. So that would be what I would say. Be honest.
One quick corollary to you, Susan, as you mentioned in your talk, was the volunteers. So how best to go finding volunteers, Susan?
Oh gosh, that's our biggest challenge. We just try, we go out through Habitats and Heritage, have a newsletter, and every month we will ask for new volunteers. And we just go out, and it's not really something that I do myself, but we have actually got quite a few new volunteers that are coming on at the moment. And it then is just a question of making sure that you really recognize what they do and how much time they give up. And when you're going into someone's home, and it can be, quite emotional, Felix was saying that what we've heard today has been really quite hard to digest. So it's just making sure that when you've got the volunteers, you value them and you support them and you recognize all that they're doing. So Alex will know this, that at the end of last year we had a kind of a volunteer of the year. So we just a little thank you to somebody who had, in my opinion, had gone above and beyond. And I think that is really, really important.
Yeah, recognise that dedication is
absolutely
important. Yeah. Felix?
I would say, firstly, clarification. I'm more angry than sad today. But thank you, everyone, for your messages of support. And I return them as well. In terms of top tips, work with others, understand what everyone else is doing, understand how you can use them, understand how we can combine forces, bring more into the pot. I would also say that managing your capacity, and exactly, I just echo exactly what Susan was saying just now. I think we've got to think long term, as well as responding to this crisis. We've got to mobilize the political support to invest on our housing, which is really the only way of having affordable, comfortable homes in the long run.
Some excellent points there, especially about that, the knowing your capacity, because we're going into uncharted territory at the moment. Catherine, over to you. Any words of advice from Celsi?
So I think working in partnerships across all the boroughs, know the local area. We work a lot with children's centers, food banks, community groups, with different, lots of numerous organizations. And it's just the easiest way to reach the people that really need our support. Regarding the capacity, I think that you need to be flexible and just have lots of problem solving. We had lots of requests for our message drops or our saving tips and stuff. And we just have to change it from delivering from our energy advisors to just deliver it by post, because we just find it to be the most time efficient. But yeah, we have no idea how it's going to be now. It starts in October. We're going to get flooded with referrals from clients, but we're just trying to prepare, have more energy advisors, get more volunteers. We can just prepare for what's coming.
Okay. Oh gosh. Well, it's sounding ominous. Okay, Alex. Last 1 minute to you. Then I'll just wrap up quickly in terms of our following events. But yeah, over to you, Alex.
Well, the message is, wherever you're at, spiritually, emotionally, geographically, there is something we can do as people interested in sustainable energy in our local communities. We have got an even more difficult task ahead of us because of the current circumstances, but there are pots of money out there. There are partners to work with. There are lessons to learn, so you don't have to learn everything from scratch. So we can stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us and continually improve. I'm here for as long as possible, to be a sounding board, signpost, know-how. I've been kicking around this space. If I don't know the answer, I know someone that will. Use me, contact me, say, what do you know about this? Where can I find out about this? What do you think of this bid? Do you know anyone who can help us with this, that, or the other? We want to do a champions program. Where do we start? We want to connect with somebody at EDF Energy. Can you help? Whatever it is. But also, it almost doesn't matter at this stage what type of intervention you do. Anything is going to be useful, frankly, and the more of us doing this, the better. And a last shout out, because of the circumstances, I've decided we're going to change our program, and rather than having it as the last in the series of 6, the next session we're going to do next month is going to be looking at what constitutes good energy advice. How do you ensure you're giving the right sort of advice at the right level? What it entails, whether it needs to be accredited, if people need qualifications or not, all things around that topic. So we're going to be doing a kind of deeper dive on the actual content, if you like, of energy advice issues. So sign up now on Eventbrite and contact me for any other questions.
That's really excellent.
Link
Alex,
is in the chat.
drop your email in the chat as well, Alex, but we will be sending out a link to the recording, 2 the slides that colleagues are provided here, 3 the next event as well. And as I said, we're halfway through our series of 6 events. As I mentioned earlier on, we are trying to build up an online resources of both local authorities and community energy group support programs on fuel poverty on the Community Energy London website. It's only just started. As you can appreciate, there's lots of stuff flying in every day, and we're trying to filter through to put what we feel is the most effective stuff on there. Forgive me, we've gone 10 minutes over, but I think all of us can approve. We've had 4 expert hands here in terms of providing advice in this afternoon session. Thank you to Susan.
Do we have a last poll about whether people found this useful or interesting?
Hold on, please, Alex. Thank you. So Susan, thank you. Felix, Catherine, and Alex. And thanks for reminding me. We do have a quick poll. So can we do that, Catherine? So that's Catherine Lindsley, not Catherine Goss.
No.
If people could put in the chat whether you found this interesting or useful, or if you want something else, or we didn't cover something, or you think something's more important. We also need, improvement in suggestions, but also things to feed back to the funder, whether it's worth us doing this sort of thing for people. So all comments gratefully received. Or if you want to send it anonymously, send it to Catherine's email address.
Exactly. I was about to say that. As part of evolving this next series of events. We'll leave it there for the moment. We'll be back to you again via emails about additional resources that we're developing. If you have any thoughts, please do come back to us. In the meantime, thank you again to our speakers. Thank you all to attending, and we look forward to seeing the 4th event. Again, it's always on the last Friday of the month at lunchtime. We'll see you then. Thank you again all. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.